Ranch owner bets 11 million that no one can tame his bull. But a boy surprises everyone. Richard Thompson was used to humiliating people. As the owner of the largest cattle ranch in the Austin area, he made a habit of setting impossible bets just to watch others fail. His latest challenge had spread through town like wildfire. $11 million to anyone who could tame Thunder, the fiercest bull to ever set foot on that land. The animal, black as night, with sharp horns and an explosive temper, had never let anyone get close. But what Richard didn't expect was that a blonde boy of just 6 years old, the son of his own cleaning lady, held a secret that would change everything. Lucy Walker cleaned the ranch's bathrooms with trembling hands. She had worked there for 3 months, ever since becoming a widow, and now she received the news she had feared most. Richard stomped through the kitchen, his large belly swaying under his sweat-stained plaid shirt. "You're fired," he said without even looking at her. "I've decided to only hire men from now on. Women aren't cut out for hard labor." "Mr. Thompson, please." Lucy dropped her mop and stepped closer. "I need this job. My son has heart problems. The doctor's visits are expensive." "Not my problem," he chewed on a piece of rare steak. "You have until Friday to pack your things." Lucy felt her world collapse. Just 3 days. How would she find another job so quickly? Little David's medical bills piled up on the dresser at home, and the money she had saved would barely cover another month of medicine. She swallowed her tears and went back to work. Outside, hidden behind the chicken coop, David Walker watched everything through the kitchen window. The boy had light blonde hair, curious blue eyes, and a white t-shirt his mother washed every day to keep clean. Though small for his age, he knew something bad was happening by the despair on his mother's face. Every day while Lucy worked, David played around the ranch. It was forbidden, but he was clever and had never been caught. What he loved most was going to the pen where the famous wild bull was kept. He never got too close to the fence, but he watched from a distance as the enormous animal everyone feared stood there. About a month ago one morning, David had noticed something strange. The bull seemed to be limping on its right hind leg. When he moved closer to see, the animal looked straight at him. Instead of snorting or charging, Thunder just stood still, as if asking for help. From then on, David started bringing fresh grass to the bull. Always early in the morning, before anyone else arrived for work, he picked the greenest grass he could find and left it near the fence. The bull would approach slowly, as if it knew the small boy meant no harm. "Hi, Thunder," David whispered. "I brought you food." The bull chewed the grass and looked at the boy with eyes that seemed to speak. David sensed a deep sadness in that gaze, as if the animal had been suffering for a long time. On this Thursday morning, after hearing about his mother's firing, David went to the pen with a heavy heart. Thunder waited in the usual spot, but today he seemed even more dejected. "Mum's gonna lose her job," David said, holding out the grass. "I don't know if I'll be able to come see you anymore." The bull moved closer than ever before. For the first time, he stretched his muzzle through the fence and let David touch him gently. His hide was rough, but the animal stayed calm. That was when David noticed something he had never seen before. On Thunder's right hind leg was a wound that looked infected. The flesh was swollen and oozing yellow fluid. David wasn't an expert, but his mother always tended to his wounds when he got hurt playing, and this looked really bad. "You're sick, aren't you?" he asked softly. "That's why you get mad when people come near. It must hurt a lot." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. By Friday morning, news of the bet had spread through town. Richard had put up posters in every bar, market, and gathering spot in Austin. $11 million to whoever tames my bull, it read in bold letters. People laughed and shook their heads. Everyone knew Thunder and understood it was impossible. Lucy was packing up her few belongings in the employee locker room when she heard laughter coming from the office. Richard was on the phone, probably telling someone about his new cruel game. "At least 20 cowboys will show up," he laughed loudly. "I'll charge $50 just to watch. I'll make money even from their failure." David's mother felt anger rising in her chest. That man thought he could play with people's lives like they were toys. She had worked hard for 3 months, always arriving early and leaving late, but none of that mattered to him. David was in the corral when he heard the excited shouts coming from the main house. He approached slowly and saw a group of men talking animatedly with Richard. They were cowboys from other ranches, some he recognized from town. "Just get close to the animal and touch it," Richard explained. "Whoever succeeds gets the 11 million, but if no one manages by the end of the day, everyone pays the entry fee and leaves." "What if the bull hurts someone?" asked an older cowboy. "Figure it out yourselves," Richard shrugged. "I won't be responsible for anything." David ran to where his mother was packing her things. Lucy's eyes were red from crying, but she tried to stay strong in front of her son. "Mom, did you hear about the bet?" David asked. "I did, sweetheart. But that's not for us. Let's just leave." "But what if someone actually touches Thunder?" Lucy stopped folding the cleaning rags and looked at her son. "Why are you asking that?" David hesitated. He had never told his mother about his secret visits to the bull. He knew she'd worry and forbid it. But now, seeing her desperation, he felt he had to speak. I know Thunder," he whispered. "What do you mean, you know him?" Lucy knelt in front of her son. "I go there every day. I bring him grass. He's not mean, Mom, he's just in pain." Lucy felt a chill in her stomach. "David, you can't go near that animal. It's dangerous. But he's never hurt me. He likes me. And I saw he has a wound on his hoof." Before Lucy could respond, they heard the sound of cars arriving. The afternoon of the bet had begun. Dozens of people crowded around the corral where Thunder was kept. The bull paced back and forth, clearly agitated by all the movement and noise. Richard climbed onto a crate to address the crowd. He wore his best dress shirt and a leather hat he only used on special occasions. His belly strained against the fabric, and he was sweating even though it was still early afternoon. "Folks, welcome to the show," he shouted. "The rules are simple. Whoever touches my bull gets 11 million. If you fail, you pay $50 just for trying." The cowboys exchanged glances. The amount was tempting, but everyone knew Thunder's reputation. The animal had already taken down 3 men last year alone, without even being provoked. The first to try was John Baker, an experienced cowboy from a neighboring ranch, a tall, strong man with over 20 years of handling cattle. He stepped into the pen with confidence, but as soon as Thunder saw him, the bull began to snort and scrape the ground with his front hooves. "Easy there, big fella," murmured Cowboy John, approaching slowly. Thunder lowered his head, pointing his horns toward the man. When John was about 10 feet away, the bull charged. John leaped to the side and ran for the fence, scrambling up quickly as the crowd laughed and cheered. "Next," shouted Richard, clearly enjoying himself. One after another, experienced ranch hands tried to approach Thunder. Some tried to distract him with food, others with gentle movements. But the result was always the same. The bull became aggressive in the presence of any adult. Lucy and David watched from a distance, hidden behind one of the farm buildings. The mother held her son's hand tightly, afraid he might get some wild idea. "See," she whispered, "it's really dangerous, sweetheart. We can't get involved." But David watched carefully. He noticed Thunder was limping worse than usual. The wound on his hoof must have been getting worse with all that movement and stress. The animal was suffering, and no one seemed to notice. When the 10th ranch hand gave up after nearly being trampled, Richard was beaming. "Now that's what I call easy money," he laughed, counting the $50 bills. "Anyone else want to try?" That's when Gerald Moore, a retired 68-year-old ranch hand, stood up from the fence where he'd been sitting. A small, lean man with white hair and hands calloused from a lifetime of working with animals. "I'll give it a shot," he said firmly. The crowd murmured in surprise. Gerald was respected in the area, but everyone thought that at his age, facing Thunder would be even more dangerous. "You sure about this, Gerald?" asked Richard, sounding a little worried. "If the old man got hurt, it could cause trouble." "I'm sure." Gerald took off his hat and handed it to a friend. "I've handled mean bulls before. Just want to take a good look at him first." Gerald walked up to the fence and studied Thunder for a few minutes. The bull watched him too, but without the aggression he'd shown the others. Something in the old man's gaze seemed to calm the animal. "This bull's sick," Gerald said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sick my foot," Richard shot back. "He's just mean, always has been." "No," Gerald shook his head. "Look how he's favoring that right hind leg. Something's wrong there." Richard grew irritated. "You gonna try or not? Quit stalling." Gerald stepped into the pen slowly. Thunder watched him approach, but didn't show the same aggression as before. When the old man was about 6 feet away, the bull lowered his head, but not threateningly. He seemed more tired than angry. "Come on, big fella," Gerald whispered. "Let me see what's bothering you." Thunder let the old man get closer than anyone else had managed. Gerald reached out slowly, but just as he was about to touch the animal, Thunder spooked at a shout from the crowd and backed away quickly. "Almost had him," Gerald said, stepping out of the pen. "But that animal's in pain. Someone ought to call a vet." "A vet, my eye," Richard scoffed. "My bull's just fine." "Y'all are just too weak to handle him." The afternoon wore on with more failed attempts. With each failure, Richard grew more arrogant and mocking. He laughed loudly every time someone ran from the bull, making snide remarks about their courage. David couldn't stand it any longer. Seeing Thunder getting more agitated and suffering, he felt he had to do something. When his mother got distracted talking to one of the other women there, he slipped away quietly. Lucy only realized her son was gone when she heard the panicked shouts coming from the pen. When she turned toward the noise, she saw the scene that froze her with terror. David had climbed the fence and was inside the corral, walking calmly toward Thunder. "David!" she screamed, running toward her son. "Get out of there now!" The entire crowd stopped to watch the surreal scene. A small boy wearing a white t-shirt and beige shorts, approaching the most feared bull in the region as if it were a gentle puppy. "Get that boy out of there!" someone shouted. "He's going to get trampled." Someone call the fire department. But something extraordinary was happening. Thunder had stopped moving the moment he saw David. The bull lowered its head, not in a threatening way, but as it did every morning when given fresh hay. "Hi, Thunder," David said in his usual sweet voice. "You're scared with so many people around, huh?" The bull moved closer slowly. When David reached out his hand, Thunder allowed him to stroke its muzzle. The crowd fell into absolute silence. Not even the sound of breathing could be heard. Richard was pale. "Get that kid out of there now," he yelled. "The bet is for adults only." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. But no one moved. They were all hypnotized by the scene before them. David kept stroking Thunder, who remained calm and even seemed to enjoy the attention. Lucy ran to the fence, tears streaming down her face. "David, sweetheart, come here slowly," she pleaded. "It's okay, Mum," David replied, not taking his eyes off the bull. "Thunder's just in pain. Look at his hoof." That was when David did something that left everyone stunned. He knelt beside the bull and pointed to its right hind hoof. "He's hurt here. It's all swollen and full of pus." Dr. Mark Anderson, the veterinarian who had come to watch the event out of curiosity, stepped closer to the fence to get a better look. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and reading glasses hanging around his neck. "My God," he murmured. "The boy's right. You can see the infection from here." "What infection?" Richard bellowed. "You're seeing things that aren't there. Get that kid out before he gets hurt." But Gerald stepped up to Richard with a stern look. "Listen here, Richard. I've worked with cattle for 50 years. That bull is sick, and by the looks of it, you've known for a while." "I don't know anything," Richard said, sweating more than usual. "My bull is perfectly fine." Inside the corral, David kept stroking Thunder. The animal had lain down, letting the boy examine the wound more closely. "It hurts a lot, doesn't it?" he whispered. "You're not mean. You're just hurting." Dr. Mark couldn't stand by any longer. "Son, can you step away slowly so I can examine the animal?" David looked at the vet, then back at Thunder. "He won't let other adults near him. But I can stay here while you look from a distance. It could be dangerous." "He trusts me," David said, with a confidence that impressed everyone. "I come here every day and bring him hay. We're friends." Lucy moved closer to the fence. "David, how long have you been doing this?" About 2 months, Mum. He's never hurt me. He's just sad because no one takes care of him right. Doctor, Mark asked someone to fetch his veterinary bag from the car. When they returned with the equipment, he was able to get a better look through the fence. What he saw made him furious. This infection has been here for months, he announced loudly for all to hear. It's a serious case of neglect. This animal is in constant pain. That's why he's aggressive with adults. He associates big people with suffering. The crowd turned to glare at Richard, who was red as a chili pepper. That's a lie, he shouted. You're all ganging up on me. That's a lie, said a woman's voice from behind. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Caroline Thompson, Richard's wife. A woman in her early 50s, thin and always well put together, but with eyes that seemed to carry years of sadness. She had always been seen as submissive and rarely spoke in public. Caroline, shut your mouth and go home, Richard growled. But for the first time in a long while, Caroline didn't obey. I won't stay quiet. I'm tired of watching you mistreat the animals and the workers. The crowd fell silent, sensing something important was about to happen. Caroline walked up to the fence where Dr. Mark stood. Doctor, for 3 months, I've been begging my husband to call a vet for that bull. He said I was being foolish, that an aggressive bull is just how they are. But I watch from the kitchen window. The animal can barely walk. Caroline! Richard tried to step toward his wife, but the crowd moved between them. No, Caroline raised her hand. Let me speak. I've stayed quiet for 20 years, but today I'm telling the truth. Dr. Mark took advantage of the distraction to enter the pen. With David calming Thunder, he managed to get close enough for a thorough examination. What he found was worse than he'd imagined. Everyone, he said, stepping out of the pen with a grave expression. This wound wasn't caused by an accident. There are marks from barbed wire, but they were made intentionally. Someone hurt this animal on purpose. The crowd erupted in murmurs of outrage. Caroline began to cry but kept speaking. It was him, she pointed at Richard. About 4 months ago, Thunder was too gentle for his liking. He said a tame bull was useless, that it needed to be fierce to defend the property. He tied barbed wire around the animal's leg and left it there for days. That's a lie, Richard shouted, but his voice no longer sounded convincing. A lie? Caroline wiped her tears. Then explain why you forbade any worker from going near the pen. Why you fired Cowboy John when he tried to tend to the wound. Why you said yourself that an aggressive bull is worth more. David, who was still beside Thunder, stood and walked to the fence. Why did you hurt Thunder? He asked, looking straight at Richard with innocent but piercing eyes. Just because he was gentle. The simple question from a child had a far greater impact than all the adults' accusations. Richard stared at the boy and couldn't answer. The crowd watched him with growing disgust. Richard Thompson, said Gerald, with the authority of his 68 years. I've known you since you were a boy. Your father was an honorable, hard-working man. How did you become this? My father was a fool, Richard spat. Worked his whole life and died poor. I learned that in this world, only the clever survive. Clever is one thing, Dr. Mark said. Cruel is something else entirely. I'll have to report this. It's a crime against animals. That was when a man no one expected to see appeared in the crowd. Lawyer Anthony Foster, known in the area for handling labor disputes, had arrived after receiving an anonymous tip about possible mistreatment. Good afternoon, everyone, he introduced himself. I'm Anthony Foster. I received an anonymous complaint about irregularities on this property. From what I'm seeing and hearing, the complaint holds merit. Richard paled. What complaint? Who's the rat that reported me? The lawyer smiled. Confidential information, but I can say it's not just about animal cruelty. There are labor issues too. Lucy, who had managed to convince David to leave the pen and now held his hand firmly, timidly approached the lawyer. Doctor, she said quietly, I got fired today. 3 months of work, and he won't even pay me properly. What do you mean he won't pay you properly? He deducted days he claims I missed, but I never missed a single day. And he refuses to pay for the overtime I worked cleaning the big house on weekends. Anthony pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Can you prove those extra hours? I can. Lucy opened her purse and took out a scribbled notebook. I wrote everything down. Every day I arrived, left, worked weekends. Richard tried to step closer. That's all lies. She's making it up. I'm not making anything up, Lucy said, gaining courage from the support around her. And it's not just me. Connie, who worked here before me, also left without getting paid right. And Cowboy John, who you fired last month. Where can I find these people? The lawyer asked. Connie lives in St. Mary's Village. John lives near Manny's butcher shop. More people in the crowd began speaking up. Other former employees, suppliers who'd been cheated, neighbors who'd endured Richard's arrogance over the years. Dr. Mark used the commotion to give Thunder a sedative and perform a full exam. What he found made him even angrier. Everyone, he said, calling for attention. Besides the infected wound on his paw, this animal is malnourished. Look at his ribs showing, and there are signs of blows to his back and neck. That's outrageous, a woman in the crowd shouted. How could anyone treat an animal like this? Caroline approached Dr. Mark. Doctor, there's something else you should know. Richard embezzles money meant for animal feed. He sells the good feed and buys cheaper stuff, pocketing the difference. Caroline, have you lost your mind? Richard tried to move toward his wife, but several men from the crowd stepped between them. I lost my mind staying silent for so long, she replied with a firmness no one had heard before. 20 years putting up with your lies, your yelling, your cruelty. I lived in fear, but today, seeing that brave boy caring for Thunder, I realized I can be brave too. David, who had been quietly watching, let go of his mother's hand and walked up to Caroline. Are you his wife? He asked. I am, sweetheart. Why did you stay quiet when he was mean? The child's innocent question made Caroline kneel to his level. Because I was scared, honey. Sometimes grown-ups are scared of the people they're supposed to love. But you're not scared anymore? Caroline looked at Richard, red with rage and desperation, then back at David. No, thanks to you, I'm not scared anymore. Lawyer Anthony had written everything down and now addressed the crowd. Folks, from what I'm hearing, we've got cases of animal cruelty, labor rights violations, and possibly other crimes. I'll need anyone with information to come talk to me. A line quickly formed. Fired workers, wronged neighbors, cheated suppliers. Everyone wanted to share their stories about Richard Thompson's abusive practices. Meanwhile, Dr. Mark tended to Thunder with David's help. The boy had become a sort of translator between the vet and the animal. Whenever Thunder grew nervous during a procedure, David calmed him with soft words and gentle touches. Doctor, David asked as he watched the vet clean the wound. Will Thunder be okay? He will, champ, but he'll need treatment for a few weeks, and most of all, he'll need love and care, things he's gone without for too long. Can I take care of him? Dr. Mark smiled. You've been taking care of him for 2 months already, haven't you? That's why he trusts you. Richard, seeing he was losing control of the situation, played his final card. Listen up, everyone, he shouted. You're letting yourselves be swayed by gossip from a bitter woman and a child who knows nothing. This is my property, my bull, and I'll do as I please. You won't, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was the town mayor, John Charles Smith, who had arrived after receiving multiple calls about the commotion at the ranch. Good afternoon, everyone, said the mayor, a black man in his 50s, always well-dressed and respected in the community. Dr. Richard, I've received several complaints about irregularities on your property. Mayor, this is all a misunderstanding. Richard tried to sound calm. Just some envious people trying to ruin me. John Charles approached the pen, where David was still helping Dr. Mark tend to Thunder. May I see the animal? Of course, said Dr. Mark. But Richard here should explain how a bull ends up in this condition. The mayor examined the infected wound, the signs of malnutrition and mistreatment. His expression grew increasingly stern. Dr. Richard, he said formally, as mayor of this town, I am ordering the immediate removal of this animal from your property for proper treatment, and I will request a full investigation into the working conditions on this ranch. You can't do this, Richard shouted. You have no authority over my property. I do, the mayor said, producing some documents he had brought. A court order issued an hour ago following the complaints that reached me. This property will be investigated for animal cruelty and labor violations." The crowd cheered. Richard looked around and realized he was completely isolated. Even his own wife stood against him. Then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Mary Conception, a 70-year-old woman from town, approached the group. She was small but strong-willed, respected by everyone in the community. "Mayor," she said, "I have a proposal." "Go ahead, Mrs. Mary. What if we turn this ranch into a cooperative for the workers who've been wronged? Richard can settle his labor debts by handing the property over to those who actually work it." The suggestion sparked murmurs in the crowd. Lucy and other former workers exchanged hopeful glances. "That's absurd," Richard yelled. "No one's taking my ranch." "No one's taking it," said the lawyer Anthony. "But if the labor debts are substantial enough, the court can order the seizure of assets for payment. It's a legal possibility." Richard felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. His arrogance crumbled into despair as he realized the consequences of his actions were closing in. David, who had watched the whole discussion, approached Thunder and whispered something into the bull's ear. The animal, now calmer after Dr. Mark's initial treatment, let the boy climb onto his back. The sight of the 6-year-old blonde boy sitting calmly atop the bull, no one could tame, brought an awed silence over the crowd. It was as if all the purity and innocence in the world were right there, contrasting with the cruelty that had been exposed. "There," David said, sliding off the bull. "Now everyone saw I tamed Thunder. Do I win the 11 million? The innocent question made some laugh, but also brought back the matter of the bet. Technically, David had done what no adult could, not just touch the bull, but ride it. Richard panicked. The bet was for adults only. Kids don't count. "Where does it say that on your posters?" Gerald asked, picking up one of the flyers posted around town. "It says here, $11 million to whoever tames my bull. It doesn't mention anything about age." The lawyer, Anthony, examined the poster. "Legally, the bet is valid. There's no specified age restriction." "But I don't have $11 million, Richard shouted in despair. "Then how did you place the bet?" asked the mayor. I knew no one would succeed. It was just to make money off the entry fees." The confession left everyone outraged. Richard had made a bet knowing he couldn't pay just to humiliate people and profit from their failed attempts. Caroline stepped closer to her husband with a look of disgust. "Richard, you've become a despicable man. When I married you, you had a heart. What happened to you?" "What happened is I got tired of being a fool like my father," he snapped. "In this world, nice guys die poor." "Your father died poor in money, but rich in dignity," said Mrs. Mary Conception. "You're dying rich in money, but poor in everything that truly matters." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The old woman's words struck deep, not just in Richard but in the whole crowd. David, not fully understanding the adult's argument, approached Richard. "Are you sad, sir?" he asked with a child's innocence. Richard looked at the boy who had caused this whole situation. For a moment his angry expression softened. "Why do you want to know?" "Because when people get this mad, it's usually because they're sad inside. My mom taught me that." David's simple observation left Richard speechless. Lucy stepped forward and gently pulled her son back. "Come here, sweetheart. Let the adults talk." But David resisted. "Mom, Mr. Richard needs help too. Just like Thunder did." "What do you mean, honey?" "Thunder got mad because he was hurting. Maybe Mr. Richard is hurting too." The child's innocent remark had a profound impact. Even those most furious with Richard paused to consider David's words. Dr. Mark, who had just finished his initial treatment of Thunder, approached the group. "Folks, I need to take the animal to the veterinary clinic in town. He needs surgery to fully clear the infection." "How much will it cost?" Lucy asked worriedly. "The treatment will be expensive," the vet admitted. "But don't worry about that now. The important thing is saving the animal." That's when Caroline made a decision that stunned everyone. "Doctor, I'll pay for Thunder's treatment." "Caroline, have you lost your mind?" Richard shouted. "We're not spending money on that animal." "We aren't." "I am," she replied firmly. "I have a private account my father left me. I never used it because you always said we didn't need it. But now I know what it's for." Richard tried to step closer to his wife, but she moved away. "And one more thing, Richard. I'm filing for divorce. I can't live with a man who's become cruel." The declaration landed like a bomb. Richard stood frozen, watching his life crumble before dozens of people. His property under investigation, his wife leaving him, the labor debts piling up. The mayor approached Lucy. "Ma'am, would you be interested in working in the administration of a possible cooperative here on the farm?" Lucy was speechless. I don't know if I'm capable." "Yes, you are, Mom," David said, squeezing her hand. "You're really smart, and you're always kind to everyone." Mrs. Mary Conception also stepped forward. "My dear, I can help you with the administrative side. I worked 40 years as a secretary at the City Hall before retiring. I know how these things work." The proposal took shape. Other former employees volunteered to join the cooperative. Each would contribute their skills, some with cattle knowledge, others with farming, others with administration. Richard watched everything with growing despair. "You can't do this to me. I worked my whole life to build this ranch." "You built this ranch by exploiting others," said Gerald. "Now it's time to pay the price." Dr. Mark managed to convince Thunder to enter the trailer he had sent for. Surprisingly, the bull only agreed to board after David explained it was to heal his wound. "Can I visit him at the clinic?" David asked. "Of course," the vet smiled. "In fact, it'll help his recovery. Animals heal faster with people they love around." While Thunder was taken for proper treatment, the lawyer Anthony organized statements from the former employees. The list of labor violations was long: unpaid wages, unpaid overtime, denied vacations, unsafe working conditions. "Mr. Anthony," Lucy asked, "how long does a case like this take?" "Depends on the complexity," he explained. "But with so much evidence and witnesses, it could be faster than usual. Maybe 6 months. Caroline approached the lawyer. "Sir, if I testify for the employees, could it speed things up?" "Absolutely. Do you know about illegal practices?" "I do. 20 years of seeing and staying silent. Fake accounts, embezzled money, forged documents. I can prove it all." Richard overheard and panicked. "Caroline, if you talk, you'll hurt yourself too. You're my wife. You're complicit in everything." "Not complicit," she replied. "A victim. For 20 years you threatened me, controlled me, kept me from working or having my own life, but that ends today." The mayor addressed the crowd. "Folks, I'm declaring this property under temporary municipal intervention while the investigation lasts. The animals here will get proper care, and labor rights will be reviewed." The crowd cheered again. Richard was cornered, watching all his sources of power and control vanish one by one. Then, something unexpected happened. From the crowd emerged a tall, thin man in his 40s, whom no one recognized at first. He approached Richard with firm steps. "Richard Thompson. Who wants to know?" "My name is Robert Sanders. I'm an investigative reporter for the regional paper. I received an anonymous tip about irregularities on this ranch." Richard paled further. "A reporter? What tip?" "A source gave me documents proving tax evasion, animal abuse, and labor exploitation. The story runs tomorrow." "What documents? That's a lie." Robert pulled a folder from his car and showed photocopies. "Fake receipts, doctored invoices, altered time logs, all documented." Caroline looked at the papers and recognized some. "These are the signatures you forced me to sign, saying they were unimportant," she told Richard. "You tricked me into forging documents." The revelation sparked more outrage. Richard had used his own wife to commit crimes, making her sign falsified papers unknowingly. Robert continued. "The tip also includes threats against employees who questioned working conditions. Can anyone testify?" Several hands rose, former workers who'd been threatened, intimidated, or fired for speaking up. David, who had been watching everything, approached the journalist. "Are you going to write about Thunder too?" Robert knelt to be at the boy's eye level. "Yes, I am. About how brave you were and how you saved an animal that was suffering." "What's your name?" "David Walker, and this is my mom, Lucy," he replied, pointing to his mother. "David, how did you find out the bull was hurt?" "I went there every day to bring him grass. I saw he was sad and limping. Then I found the wound on his hoof." Robert wrote everything down. The story of the boy who tamed the fierce bull, saving it from abuse, would be perfect to sway public opinion. Richard, seeing the situation was completely out of control, made one last desperate move. "Listen here," he shouted. "I'll pay everything I owe the workers, but I want to be left alone." "Too late," said the lawyer Anthony. "The crimes have already been committed. Now it's up to the law." "But I can change. I can be different." It was David who answered, with the innocent wisdom of a child. "You can change, yes. But first, you have to stop hurting those who can't defend themselves." The boy's simple words touched even some of the angriest people present. Richard looked at the child who had turned his life upside down. "Why did you do this?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Why did you interfere in my life?" "I didn't interfere in your life," David replied. "I just wanted to help Thunder. He was suffering, and no one cared. But because of this, my life is ruined." "Your life was already ruined," David said with surprising insight for his age. "You just didn't realize it." The remark left Richard speechless. A 6-year-old had seen something he had denied for years, that his life, built on cruelty and exploitation, was fundamentally wrong. Caroline approached her husband one last time. "Richard, David is right. Our life has been rotten for a long time. I pretended not to see because I was afraid, but that boy had the courage I didn't have for 20 years. "And now?" Richard asked, for the first time showing vulnerability instead of anger. "Now you have the chance to become a better person," she replied. "But first you'll have to pay for your mistakes." The mayor stepped closer to Richard. "Doctor, you have 2 choices. Cooperate with the investigation and try to lessen the consequences, or keep resisting and make everything worse." Richard looked around. He was completely alone. His wife had filed for divorce, his workers had reported him, the community rejected him, and the press was exposing his crimes. Then he did something unexpected. He sat on the ground, buried his face in his hands, and began to cry. Not out of anger or frustration, but from a deep sadness that seemed long buried. "I don't know when I became this person," he said between sobs. "My father was an honest worker. My mother was kind. How did I end up here?" David let go of his mother's hand and walked up to Richard. To everyone's surprise, the boy placed his hand on the shoulder of the man who had caused so much pain. "You can be good again," he said gently. "Thunder used to get angry because he was hurting, but when I took care of him, he became gentle again." The child's compassion for someone who had been cruel moved everyone deeply. Even the angriest among them began to see Richard not just as a villain, but as a human being who had lost his way. Lucy stepped forward and took her son's hand. "David, come here. Mom, he needs help too, just like Thunder." "I know, sweetheart, but some people need to learn to ask for help on their own." Dr. Mark, who had returned after taking Thunder to the clinic, approached the group. "Everyone, I have good news. The bull responded well to the first treatment. The surgery will be early tomorrow morning, but the chances of a full recovery are good." "Can I visit him tomorrow?" David asked. "Yes, you can. In fact, it would be great if you could stay with him during recovery. Animals heal faster with company." Richard looked up at Dr. Mark. "Doctor, how much will the full treatment cost?" "Why do you want to know?" "Because I want to pay for it. It's my responsibility." The offer surprised everyone. Caroline stared at her husband with a mix of shock and suspicion. "You don't have to, Richard," she said. "I already said I'll pay." "Yes, you do," he replied, standing up. "I caused the animals suffering. I should be the one to fix it." The lawyer Anthony stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, this won't lessen the legal consequences of your actions." "I know," Richard answered, "but maybe it'll ease the weight on my conscience." Robert, the journalist, wrote everything down. Richard's transformation, even if just beginning, would make an interesting angle for his story. The mayor gathered the main group. "Folks, it's getting late. Let's plan the next steps. Mr. Foster, how long will you need to prepare the labor documentation?" "A week if I can gather all the paperwork and witnesses." "Mrs. Thompson, are you sure about the divorce?" Caroline glanced at Richard, who stood silent with his head down. "I am. But not out of revenge. It's because I need to rebuild my life away from this toxicity. What about the workers' cooperative? Mrs. Mary stepped forward. Mayor, I can coordinate the initial setup. We have experienced workers, Mrs. Thompson's resources, and community support. Lucy still couldn't believe the change in her life. Mrs. Mary, I don't know if I'm capable of managing a farm. You are, dear, the older woman replied. I've seen how carefully you take notes, how you cared for your boy even through hardship. We need someone organized and honest. David tugged his mother's sleeve. Mum, if you become the farm manager, can Thunder live here again? Lucy smiled for the first time in a long while. Maybe, sweetheart, if he wants to and is healthy. He will, David said confidently. He likes it here. He just didn't like being mistreated. Richard watched the conversation quietly. Seeing hope on the faces of those he'd exploited filled him with regret, and something he hadn't felt in years, the desire to do something right. Lucy, he said, stepping forward hesitantly. She turned, still wary. Sir, I want to apologize for how I treated you and your son. You didn't deserve it. Why are you apologizing now? Richard looked at David, who watched him with curious eyes. Because your son reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that being strong doesn't mean hurting others. It means protecting those who need it. The answer surprised Lucy. For the first time, she saw something like humanity in her former boss's face. Thank you for the apology, she said, but words won't pay the overdue bills or heal a broken heart. I know, Richard replied. That's why I want to do more than apologize. I want to make things right. Lawyer Anthony approached. Mr. Thompson, are you willing to fully cooperate with the investigation and reparations? I am. Even knowing it could mean losing your property and facing criminal charges? Richard hesitated, then looked at David again. I am. I can't change what I did, but I can try to fix what I caused. Dr. Mark turned to David. Champ, I'm operating on Thunder early tomorrow. Want to come with me to the clinic? Can I, Mom? Lucy glanced at the vet. Won't it be a bother? On the contrary, his presence will help a lot with the animal's recovery. Caroline approached Lucy. Lucy, can I talk to you for a minute? The two women stepped away from the group. Caroline seemed nervous, as if about to say something difficult. Lucy, I want to apologize to you too. Apologize for what? For staying silent while watching how he treated you and the other workers. I saw everything from the kitchen window, but I never had the courage to speak up. Lucy studied the older woman's face. She saw sincerity and years of repressed suffering. You were also his victim, she said gently. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. Being a victim didn't give me the right to turn a blind eye to others' suffering. The two women embraced, a hug between two people who understood, each in their own way, what it meant to live under the shadow of Richard's cruelty. Meanwhile, David approached Richard again. Mr. Richard, do you want to be friends with Thunder too? The question caught Richard off guard. What do you mean? When he gets better, you can come visit him, but only if you're nice. Do you think he'd even accept being my friend after what I did? David thought for a moment. I think so. Thunder is kind. If you apologize and promise not to hurt him anymore, he'll forgive you. The child's innocent belief in redemption touched Richard deeply. For the first time in years, he felt there might be hope for him too. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink. The crowd started to disperse, but not before organizing next steps. It was agreed that on Monday, there would be a meeting at City Hall to formalize the creation of the cooperative. Robert, the journalist, said goodbye after collecting all the necessary statements. Folks, the story will be in tomorrow's regional paper and will be distributed for free in town. David and Thunder's story will move a lot of people. Dr. Mark left to prepare for the next day's surgery. Mrs. Mary Conception offered to drive Lucy and David home since they had walked to the farm. Before leaving, David approached Thunder's empty pen. The space seemed sad and hollow without the bull. Tomorrow you'll come home, Thunder, he whispered, as if the animal could hear him from afar. And it'll be different. No one will hurt you anymore. Richard watched the scene from a distance. Seeing that child show so much love for an animal he had mistreated made him realize the depth of the emptiness he had created in his own life. Caroline approached him one last time. "Richard, I'll stay at my sister's until I sort things out. The divorce papers will arrive next week." "Caroline, do you think you could ever forgive me?" She thought for a long moment. "Maybe. But first, you need to forgive yourself and become someone worthy of forgiveness." With those words, Caroline walked away, leaving Richard alone with his thoughts and regrets. On Monday morning, the town woke up to the regional paper's headline, "6-year-old boy tames fierce bull, exposes network of abuse and labor exploitation." The cover photo showed David petting Thunder, an image that touched thousands of hearts. Thunder's surgery was a success. Dr. Mark completely removed the infection and repaired the damage to his hoof. Throughout the procedure, David waited in the lobby, drawing pictures of the bull to decorate the recovery stall. When Thunder woke from anesthesia, the first thing he saw was the smiling face of the boy who had become his best friend. The bull tried to stand but was still weak. "Easy, Thunder," David said softly. "You need to rest to get strong again." Dr. Mark watched the interaction with admiration. It's amazing how animals recognize people who truly care for them. Lucy had arrived at the clinic with news. "David, something incredible happened. Donations came in from all over the region to help with Thunder's treatment." Donations? People read the article in the newspaper and were moved by the story. "We've already raised enough money for the entire treatment, and there's even some left to create a veterinary care fund for the other animals on the ranch." Dr. Mark smiled. Kindness is contagious. David's courage inspired so many people. At the town hall, the meeting to formalize the cooperative was packed. Besides the former ranch workers, volunteers showed up wanting to help, local business owners offering support, and even representatives from other towns interested in the project. Mrs. Mary Conception chaired the meeting with the experience of her years as a public servant. "Everyone, the idea is to create a cooperative that serves as an example of how work can be both fair and productive." Lucy was unanimously elected as the general manager. Her honesty and dedication had impressed everyone involved in the project. "I still can't believe this is happening," she said, emotional. "A week ago I was unemployed and desperate. Today I'm here organizing a cooperative. That's the power of courage," said Mrs. Mary. "Your son had the courage to do what was right, and that inspired all of us to be brave too." Meanwhile, at the ranch, Richard walked alone through the land that would soon no longer be his. The investigation had uncovered irregularities that made the seizure of the property inevitable to settle the labor debts. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel anger or resentment. He felt something like peace, as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The lawyer, Anthony, had negotiated a deal that would benefit everyone involved. Richard would hand over the ranch to the cooperative in exchange for the forgiveness of the labor debts and a reduced sentence for the crimes committed. "Dr. Richard," Anthony said during the negotiation, "are you sure you want to accept this deal?" "I am," Richard replied. "It's fair. These people worked hard to build this ranch. It's only right that it belongs to them." Caroline was present at the negotiation, no longer as his wife, but as a witness willing to cooperate with justice. She had revealed the existence of secret bank accounts Richard kept, money that would be used to supplement the workers' compensation. "Caroline," Richard said during a break in the meeting, "what will you do now?" "I'm starting over," she replied. "At 52, I'm going to find out who I really am without living in your shadow." "Do you have plans?" "I do. I'll use part of the settlement money to open a small inn in town." "I've always liked hosting people, but you never allowed it." Richard nodded sadly. Another life he had limited with his controlling behavior. A week later, Thunder was discharged from the veterinary clinic. The whole town gathered to witness the bull's return to the ranch, now under new management. David organized a small welcome ceremony. He had prepared a new pen with softer flooring, proper shade, and a water trough always filled with fresh water. But most importantly, Thunder would now have the freedom to graze wherever he pleased. "Welcome home, Thunder," David said, opening the trailer gate. The bull stepped down slowly, still careful with his operated leg. But when he saw the wide, clean space and caught the familiar scent of the ranch, his eyes seemed to shine with contentment. Lucy watched the scene with emotion. "Son, you didn't just save Thunder. You saved all of us." "I just wanted to help a friend who was suffering," David replied, stroking the bull's muzzle. The rest happened on its own. Richard watched from afar outside the property. He had asked for permission to see Thunder's return, promising to keep his distance. David noticed his presence and approached the fence. "Mr. Thompson, would you like to come in and see how well Thunder's doing?" Richard hesitated. "Do you think he'll accept me?" "Only one way to find out." David opened the gate and invited Richard inside. The man walked slowly toward Thunder, who watched him carefully. When he was just a few feet away, Richard stopped and knelt. "Thunder," he said, his voice choked. "I'm sorry for everything I did to you. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway." The bull observed him for a few seconds, then did something unexpected. He walked up to Richard and gently touched his head with his muzzle, as if offering the forgiveness he'd asked for. Richard began to cry. He hadn't received such tenderness in years, and coming from an animal he'd mistreated made the gesture even more powerful. "Thank you," he whispered, stroking Thunder's muzzle. "I promise I'll never hurt anyone again." David approached and placed a hand on Richard's shoulder. "Now you two can be real friends." The scene moved everyone present. Seeing Richard's transformation, from a cruel man to someone capable of genuine remorse, gave hope that people truly can change. Dr. Mark stepped forward to give Thunder one last checkup. "Perfect," he said, satisfied. "The hoof is completely healed. He can go back to a normal life." "A better life than normal," Lucy corrected. "A life with love and care." The cooperative began operating the following week. The former employees took on their new roles as partners, no longer exploited workers. Productivity improved significantly, as everyone now worked knowing the fruits of their labor would be shared fairly. Caroline opened her inn 3 months later. The first guest was a journalist from New York who had come to write a story about the farm cooperative. The New Beginning Inn became a regional benchmark for its owner's warm hospitality. Richard served alternative community service, assigned to work on an animal rights education program in local schools. Ironically, he became one of the program's most respected speakers. "Children," he would say during one of his talks, "I learned the hard way that being strong doesn't mean hurting the weak. It means protecting them. A 6-year-old boy taught me that." David grew up on the cooperative farm, always by Thunder's side. The bull became the gentlest animal on the property, letting visiting children pet him and even ride on his back. 5 years later, the cooperative farm became a model for other regions in the country. Lucy was invited to give talks on cooperative management and labor rights, but she always made sure to tell the full story. "It all started with my son wanting to help an animal in pain," she would say. "He didn't think about the consequences or weigh the risks. He just saw suffering and wanted to ease it." That purity of intention is what touched everyone's hearts and started the change. David, now 11, still visited Thunder every day. The bull, older but healthy, always greeted him with affection. "Thunder," David said one sunny afternoon, lying in the grass beside him. "Did you know you saved more than just yourself?" The bull looked at him with those wise eyes that seemed to understand every word. When you let everyone see your pain, people realized they could talk about their own suffering too. And then everyone started helping each other. Lucy watched the conversation from afar, her heart full of pride. Your son had grown up maintaining the same compassion and wisdom he had shown at 6 years old. Richard also visited the farm occasionally, always with permission and accompanied. His transformation had been gradual but steady. He had learned to listen more and speak less, to observe others' suffering rather than cause it. "David," he said during one of those visits, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "How did you know I could change? Why didn't you give up on me when everyone else had?" David thought for a moment. "Because my mum taught me that everyone has goodness in their heart. Sometimes it's hidden beneath anger or sadness, but it's always there. And if the person doesn't want to change, then there's nothing you can do," David replied with a child's honesty. But if they want to, they always can. Richard smiled. That boy was still teaching him valuable lessons about humanity and forgiveness. Dr. Mark became the official veterinarian for the cooperative, developing animal welfare programs that were adopted by farms across the region. Thunder's story became a case study in veterinary schools. Mrs. Mary Conception, now 75, remained active in coordinating the cooperative. Her experience and wisdom were essential in maintaining harmony among the members. "You know what amazes me most about this story?" she said during a cooperative meeting. "It's how a 6-year-old boy saw the solution none of us adults could see." "What solution?" someone asked. "That the problem wasn't the bull being mean. The problem was the bull suffering. When the suffering was resolved, everything else was too." Mrs. Mary's observation became the cooperative's unofficial motto: solve the suffering, solve the problem. David and Thunder's story was documented in a book, a film, and even a children's musical. But for those involved, the most important thing wasn't the fame. It was the real transformation that had happened in their lives. Lucy remarried 3 years later to John Baker, the first ranch hand who had tried to tame Thunder. He turned out to be a kind, hard-working man who loved David as his own son. "Mom," David asked on the wedding day, "do you think if I hadn't helped Thunder, you would have met John?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but I do know if you hadn't helped Thunder, none of us would be the people we are today." The ceremony was held at the farm itself, with Thunder serving as a sort of furry best man. The bull, now completely gentle and sociable, let the children play around him throughout the celebration. Richard watched the ceremony from a distance, invited by David despite some adults' initial objections. Seeing the happiness of the people he had once mistreated gave him a strange but rewarding sense of peace. Caroline was also there, accompanied by her new boyfriend, a retired teacher she'd met at the New Beginning Inn. She looked 10 years younger, her face glowing with the happiness of finally living her own life. "Richard," she said, approaching her ex-husband during the celebration, "how are you?" "Better than I deserve to be," he answered honestly. "And you?" "Figuring out who I am at 55. It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time." They talked for a few minutes, not as bitter ex-spouses, but as two people who had undergone a deep transformation and could finally relate without toxicity. Robert, the journalist who had originally documented the story, returned for a 5-year follow-up. He found a thriving, united, and happy community. "David," he asked during the interview, "what did you learn from everything that happened?" "I learned that sometimes people get angry because they're hurting inside," replied David, now more articulate but keeping the same wisdom, "and that if we help with the pain, the anger goes away on its own." "Do you have any advice for other children who see animals or people suffering?" "Tell a trusted adult, and remember that even bad people can become good if someone helps them stop hurting." The interview was published and went viral on social media, inspiring other transformation stories around the world. On the 10th anniversary of the story of The Boy Who Tamed the Wild Bull, an education center for animal and workers' rights was opened on the farm. The center welcomed visitors from across the country interested in learning about cooperatives and animal welfare. David, now 16, worked as a guide at the center on weekends. Thunder, very old but still healthy, was the main attraction. Children came from far away to meet the famous bull and hear the story of his friendship with David. "This is Thunder," David would say to each group of visitors. "He taught me that sometimes we need courage to help those who can't ask for help, and that when we do, we end up helping ourselves too." Richard, now 60, had become the director of a shelter for abandoned animals in the neighboring town. His personal experience with animal cruelty had turned into a passion for protecting them. "People always ask how I changed so much," he would say during talks. "The answer is simple. A child showed me what I had become and gave me hope that I could be better." Lucy completed a course in cooperative management and became a consultant, helping other communities create their own cooperative projects. She always brought David along on trips when possible, as people wanted to meet the boy who had started the transformation. The farm's cooperative had expanded to include dairy production, organic farming, and rural tourism. Profits were divided equally among all members, and a percentage went to a fund to help other struggling communities. Dr. Mark became a national reference in veterinary medicine focused on animal welfare. He wrote several books about the connection between animals and humans, always including David and Thunder's story as an example of how compassion can change lives. Miss Mary Conception, now 80, still attended cooperative meetings as an honorary consultant. Her wisdom and experience remained essential to the group's harmony. "Do you know the secret to this cooperative's success?" she said during a celebratory meeting. "It was born from love, not profit, from the desire to heal suffering, not cause more." Caroline turned her inn into a shelter for women escaping domestic violence. Her own transformation empowered her to help other women find the courage to start over. "Sometimes a 6-year-old child has more courage than a 50-year-old woman," she would tell her guests. "But it's never too late to learn to be brave." David and Thunder's story became part of the school curriculum in the region as an example of citizenship and compassion. Teachers used it to teach about animal rights, cooperatives, and social change. On the 20th anniversary of the story, a grand celebration was held at the farm. People came from all over the country to attend. David, now an adult and a licensed veterinarian, specialized in animal-assisted therapy. Thunder had passed away 2 years earlier at 23, surrounded by the love of all those he had touched. His death was mourned by the entire community, but celebrated as the end of a full and happy life. "Thunder taught me that love has the power to heal any wound," said David during the main speech at the celebration, "physical or emotional, and that when we heal the wounds of others, we heal our own wounds too." Richard, now 70 years old with completely white hair, was present at the celebration. His transformation had been complete and lasting. He was respected in the community as proof that people can genuinely change. "I spent 40 years of my life spreading suffering," he said during his speech, "and the last 20 trying to repair the damage I caused. I learned that it's never too late to start doing good, but it's much better to start early." Lucy, now the national coordinator of rural cooperatives, had become one of the leading voices of the cooperative movement in the country. But she always made sure to credit everything to her son. "My son taught me that age doesn't matter when it comes to doing what's right," she said. At 6 years old, he had more moral wisdom than many adults. And it was that wisdom that transformed all of us. The celebration included the unveiling of a bronze statue in the center of the farm, showing a small boy petting a large bull. The plaque read, "In honor of David and Thunder, who taught us that compassion can change the world." Dr. Mark, now retired but still active, gave the closing speech at the celebration. "This story began with an animal suffering and a child who cared enough to help," he said. "Today, 20 years later, we have a thriving community, dozens of lives transformed, and an example that inspires people all over the world. That is the power of compassion in action." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Where are you watching from? If you have any reflections or similar experiences to share, leave them in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe a child's compassion can truly transform lives like it did for David and Thunder? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.